From green to red, which you did, perfect. Welcome everybody, I hereby call to order this Tuesday, November 12th meeting of the Easthampton Planning Board. Is there anyone here to speak to something that is not on our agenda tonight? Anyone? Okay. Then we'll move right into the agenda. I don't have any minutes for review, is that correct?
Correct.
I didn't see anything. I'm just going to start us up. We have three things. I'm going to give a brief bit of monologue here, let you know what's coming up. We got three things tonight. Our first is an A&R from Williston, and then we have River Valley Co-op coming back to show us their solar plan. And we have Holistic Industries with a special permit for recreational marijuana. We're going to be doing those in the order in which I just listed them out. I expect the A&R will be very quick, and if it goes past 7:30 on the River Valley, we'll probably at that point be switching to the Holistic, just to give everyone a sense of time. Hopefully we don't go that late on those issues, but we have to let things play out. So is there someone here to speak to the A&R from Williston, Northampton?
Yes.
Come on in.
Evening. Mark Reed from Heritage Surveys. You have the plan in front of you. This is a plan that the board had previously signed, and when it was being reviewed by the attorney, he found that we had an additional deed reference that wasn't into Williston. It was a back title deed reference. So he felt that if you're going to record the plan, we ought to
Do it right.
do it right.
Okay.
And the only other change was we had a reference, here's the plan that you did sign. So we had a reference to the Williston Northampton School being in here, which didn't need to be here because it all covers in the note for deed references. So there's no change in property line or anything.
Yeah, so frontage is all the same as was
Yep.
previously
Correct.
endorsed.
Correct.
Anyone have any comments?
No, sir.
Then I'm looking for a motion to endorse the A&R for Williston Northampton School.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Aye.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any against or abstentions? All right, it's approved. Now, it's going to take me a bit to sign these. I don't want to hold the process up, so I'll ask you to take a seat. I'm going to kind of sign these. I'll pass them to Jeff surreptitiously as we move through, and we'll get you out of here as we go, okay? It
I'll
won't
be
be
here for
long.
the third item, so
Give me about 60 seconds to start.
you don't have to, you can do it after.
Yeah.
Because I'm
You
Jim.
can stay?
Yeah, I'm Jim. I'm here for
Holistic as well.
Holistic.
That's perfect. That makes it easy. All right.
Forget.
I'll kind of do it as I go here. All right. So our next item is River Valley Co-op, and before we proceed with this, our normal process would be to bring the applicant up and have you tell us a little bit about what's going on today. Before we do that, I want to talk about what this is. We approved a special permit back on March 19th for River Valley Co-op. To be at 228, 232 Northampton Street. Condition number 2 of that special permit was that the group would bring back for our review their solar plans so that we could determine that they were up to meet our muster. Now this is really interesting because, and Jeff, I'm looking at you a lot on this, we don't really have a process for this. So what I'm kind of seeing is that we should treat this as if it was a special permit, but only in relation, in terms of asking questions and how we're evaluating it, but only in relation to the solar component. And at the end, we're not voting for approval for any kind of permit.
Right.
In fact, I'm not even sure if it's an endorsement or if it's just notification of receipt of documentation. Do you have an angle on that?
I would encourage the board to vote that the plans submitted, are in compliance with the zoning ordinance or the condition number 2. And I think it's a vote to approve materials at a public meeting.
Okay.
So you're allowed to do that. I think it's sort of a business meeting of the board you've already approved the solar concept, so that required the special permit, and so the board granted the special permit for the solar, and it was just at the point of time that the special permit was getting issued, some of the I's and T's were not dotted and crossed, and so that's what the applicant is here before you to show you all the details.
Okay. I have no problem with that, but before, and I see some hands coming up, but hold on a second. What would happen if we didn't approve?
So technically what I would observe is that if you felt like there was still more information, then you continue this or have them come back at your next public meeting with whatever information you feel like you still need. So this is, the condition number 2 is that prior to the issuance of a building permit. So the building commissioner is gonna be looking for an affirmative vote from the planning board that they reviewed this per that condition. So I believe that you do still have the ability to ask for more information or deem it acceptable, take your vote to approve the information submitted. And that's what the building commissioner is gonna look for before he or she issues the building permit.
That all seems amenable to me. So we'll essentially treat that as a single component of a special permit. Is everyone on the board okay with that as a process?
Yes.
In that case, I did see that there was a question there. Is it specifically related to that?
Yeah, it's not a question. I just wanted to see if I can help move that
Okay.
that issue along. I mean, there's more than one reason for doing.
Name?
My name is Alan Seawald. I'm the attorney for River Valley Co-op. The other reason is if we've made changes that are so substantial, you could determine that we need to go to a full hearing. And so that's another thing that's another determination you're making. I wouldn't suggest that in any way the changes that have been made are anywhere near significant enough, but that's another evaluation that you would have to make. And it also would fix the plan that has to be built. Just like your special permit has plans that attach to that permit, we will now have a new set of plans that attach to that permit, and that's the intent here. So
Sounds
the
good.
building inspector knows whether they're building what's on the plan.
Okay. I think we've got our marching orders here. Why don't we start with the applicant telling us a little bit about what's going on?
Once again, I'm Alan Seawald. I represent River Valley Co-op. And then Jeff Squire is here, and he has some boards that he wants to go through with you just to give you an idea of exactly what we're doing and the few changes that have been made from what you saw when you approved the special permit.
Great. Thank you,
Jeff.
Alan. I'm going to try to do this Vanna White style since I think I'm going to trip over my knees if I stand up. So,
Let me hold it for you.
well, I think I can do this. So this plan just, and again, we're just looking at the solar piece of this. So this site plan was what was approved as part of the special permit originally. What's highlighted in blue here was the solar design that we originally had proposed in the special permit. These are solar covered, carports. In various locations, and then on the south side of the site. What you're looking at here is where we stand currently with the solar plan. It really hasn't changed substantially in that the additional panels are located on over the drive aisles, and in this location. This panel, these two, along these 3 islands, all existed previously. This panel and the row existed here. There was one that was closer to the wetlands that since has moved up closer to the one that we had shown previously. So all the stormwater, all the other details, the foundations, the height of it, all are still very much in line with what we had originally shown. In the packet of information you have, there's probably way more information than you need.
It was thorough. I like that.
And so what you're looking at here, again, very similar to what we had shown previously, were the solar, carports. These would obviously be extended to cover the drive aisles. We have reviewed this with the fire department. They're okay with emergency access. That was one concern. And then the other thing to note is also on this plan we have indicated locations for battery packs and the inverters, some of the mechanical or electrical details. The inverters and the switchgear, those will all be fenced in a wood enclosure similar to what we've got elsewhere on the site, so it does provide a sort of cohesive element on site.
Can you describe that fencing?
It's a wood. It's a standard
Height?
7 foot tall, I think, wood. It's not a stockade. It's a shadow box style fence. We've got some plantings in front of it to dress it up a little bit, but that will enclose the inverters and any electrical gear. The batteries themselves are self-enclosed. They have locking doors on either side, so they are tamper-proof and don't require fencing. Those will each be mounted in a line underneath the arrays, so they're not out in the open. And I think everything else really is very consistent with what we had shown in the original special permit.
Okay. Nothing else you want to present?
I don't think so at this point.
So now it's time to open it up to questions from us. I have a couple. Before I give it to the audience, we're going to start with the board. I will give an opportunity for questions for the audience as well, but I just want to start with some issues right off. as I went through this, I'll start, and if you guys have something, feel free to jump in. You had a component here on sound at the end, which I found a little bit difficult to muss through. I'm wondering if you can clarify, especially that last page that was in that document. I wonder if you could just speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, that was right. Yeah, I, to be honest with you, had a tough time delving through all of it myself, yes. And I think he acknowledged that it took a calculus degree to really understand the algorithms that go into it. I think the bulk of what that, the summary of what that says is that anything within 30 feet, was that, I didn't try to remember what the exact distance was, you virtually couldn't hear anything. And that was no more than a passing car. And we're well away from, where any of that switch gear is, up in the center of the site here. We're a good, 100 feet or so from the roadway, in the middle of an open field to the south, and a parking lot to the north.
It's unfortunate to have paid for this level of detail and not be able to translate it. I'm seeing things here where it seems to be indicating inverters in the 61 decibel range, and it's saying 44 decibels about the sound equivalent to a library. And of course, we on the board have been through this many times, so we have kind of a sense of these things, but it's important that we share it with everyone so that there's an understanding. And that sort of tells and indicates to me from what I'm getting from this that overall the sounds are very low. You might hear hums when you're close to some of the specific devices and really close to them, but you're not going to hear it otherwise. Would you say that's an accurate statement?
Correct.
And obviously, the farther away you get, it diminishes very rapidly.
And that would be mostly around that area where you talked about where you're putting the devices on the concrete slabs there that are fenced in, right? That's where most of the sound. Is there any sound coming from any of the other components?
None of the other components have any noise.
So they're really relegated to one specific zone.
We actually thought about moving these to different places, but left it there because it's least impacted sound-wise.
I couldn't help but notice that one of the devices, if you can hold up the one you have on the bottom there, looks like it's ready for tagging. And that's the box in the bottom right. Are you planning on allowing an Easthampton artist to go to town on that, I hope?
We talked about it.
Would that be a condition of the special permit?
Sure would. Would it be a recommendation you do it before someone else does it for you? So,
Should we make that a
I think
condition?
a nice bear.
Yeah, we talked about doing a wrap, bear and sunglasses and the sun, something.
Fun.
does the board have any questions about sound?
No, the sounds.
I sense, Chris, that you might have something going. What you got?
No, and my only question is, so the detail 5, which has the solar canopy section / elevation, you've got your canopy beams connecting in the middle.
Yes.
So is natural light coming down in there, or is it more garage-like feeling? And if so, has the lighting changed?
There is a gap in between the panels. So my understanding is that there is some natural light that will filter down through there and help light that during the daytime. I don't think the distance from end to end is so great that you won't get some ambient light during the day.
Okay.
There's also gaps on the inside of the butterfly, if you will, over the drainage trenches. So there's a ribbon of light down both ends of the parking stall, from the front end and then the back end. I'm sorry.
Lighting change.
Lighting change. There is a lighting change that I don't know actually if it made it. There is a new photometric plan, but it's all going to be under recessed lighting underneath the canopies.
Okay. But I guess, have you done any? Is there any safety concern with being dark under there and not enough light? Is there any issues with that? Okay.
No.
That you know of? Okay.
No. No, I think we've had the same lighting consultant doing work on the remainder of the site, make sure that there's adequate light under there that's consistent with what we had shown previously. And as I said, during the daylight hours, I think there's more.
There'll be enough ambient light.
Yeah.
Okay.
Can we just touch on that lighting plan a little bit?
Yes.
Do you have a diagram?
I don't have it with me, and I apologize. And I can provide that. I can provide a copy to Jeff. But we do have a new photometric plan. Based on the recessed lights under there. Yeah.
Okay. I remember talking about lighting when we originally approved this. Obviously, these changes have made some changes to that plan, so it is different. You've got a new plan, as you stated.
Yes.
All right, I guess we'll just have to, we don't have anything we
And
can...
I think we had anticipated recessed lighting in the original special permit, because we had shown, the canopies obviously in the original permit. I think there was some discussion about the extent of, how far these solar panels would actually cover, so that's why there's a revised plan, a lighting plan to accompany it, but.
What about permeable surface, water runoff? We talked about that a lot in the special permit before. Does this new plan change anything in terms of the surface underneath it, in terms of plantings and open space compared to...
It doesn't affect open space calculations, it doesn't affect stormwater insofar as volumes and amount of runoff. In some ways, it's actually a benefit because we now have rainwater washing across the pavement. These are all, this would be treated like a roof surface, clean runoff relatively, going into drainage structures that we had there previously. So, I think it's actually an overall improvement.
I'm going to keep throwing out questions unless someone else has one. And then here's another. Let's talk about what happens in 20 years. Now, we talked about this at some length, and it's a standard process that we go through on this board when dealing with solar, and we've got a lot of experience with it at this point. Typically, after 20 years, there's an assumption that they're either going to find it unprofitable to replace, and we need some sort of assurance or surety that there's funds put aside to take it down. In this case, it seemed that was unlikely because you had a situation here where this was a much longer term concept. So I would like to hear about your maintenance plan and what surety the city has that we won't be left with blight.
Well, I think that if I recall, when we discussed that, the reason that the board didn't feel it needed surety is because this is not standalone. This is all part of the co-op. And, the last people in town who want blight at that site is the co-op. And so it's in their interest to take it down if it's not functional, even more than it's in the town's interest. If the co-op fails, that's a whole other question, but that doesn't seem like the co-op is flourishing. And so I believe that was the reason that no bond or anything like that was even considered back when we went through the original special permit hearing.
So you don't see anything happening to the co-op in years to come?
I don't foresee anything happening. The co-op has been growing faster than it ever anticipated growing when we first started this.
I know co-ops grow fast, but then they sort of peter down or slow down, so you don't predict that when it does start slowing down, it's not going to lose people from that.
So,
Let me introduce Rochelle Prunty. She's the general manager of the co-op.
hi.
Hello?
Part of the reason that we're building a second store is so that doesn't happen. It's like, it's like you're growing a perennial plant and it gets too root bound and crowded.
Right.
If you don't do anything, it's not going to grow so much anymore. But if you separate it and start another one, then it's gonna grow some more. So our plan is to keep the co-op strong and growing, and
That's what I'd like to hear.
But if that didn't happen, the solar panels would be the least of your problems.
I realize that, but then, one has to help the other.
The most
our
likely
worst case scenario is clearly that the co-op doesn't do well, that it goes under, and that there isn't any money left over to deal with what remains. And what remains are all these solar panels that aren't being maintained. That's a worst case scenario, and it's our duty, I think it's respectable, it's our duty to look at what the best and worst is. We want the best. I think we all agree on that. But in the worst case scenario where it fails, and these are left behind, and the city is left with all these unmanaged solar panels on a site, which is therefore much more difficult to repurpose, that's an issue. And I might be the only one that sees that issue. I definitely remember discussing it at the last meeting and being relatively assuaged by your arguments that this is a different kind of site. So I'm certainly not as much of a proponent as having a surety as I am for a regular solar site whose sole purpose is the generation of electricity. I do think you have stronger foundation, but I think we should talk about it a little bit.
Well, I'll jump in a little. So I think when you asked the question about the purpose of the public meeting, I guess I'll sharpen the pencil a little bit and say that you do have limited ability to add new conditions and requirements within the public meeting scope. So the concept of solar has already been approved. So we have to be cognizant that the board made a finding that there was a discussion about how our ordinance was created with like this vision of large-scale solar, that the traditional development of that is in this forest or a field solely for that purpose. So the parts of the discussion was that this is solar associated with some other commercial business and use. So I think the board already made a finding that they wouldn't require the bond as part of this removal, and I think part of the discussion is that...
Was that explicitly stated?
Yeah, so it's in one of the findings under this. But I think it's a good discussion. I mean, I think, I think we have to be a little bit careful where this is the first time Easthampton will have this type of solar array that is associated with another use. But if you look at the existing building that's there now, there is no requirement or condition that a vacant building be demolished. So this falls in line with that it's a building, it's part of the structure, it's part of the use of this commercial piece of property to which wouldn't necessarily apply the same standards as we have with the large-scale solar that is in a greenfield.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I think, the same thing, I think the proper analogy might be a sign. So someone comes in and they put up one of those metal signs, and the building goes out of business and the sign stays. And so what we would want to do is have a more generalized ordinance for stuff like that, and I don't think it's appropriate to potentially apply it here.
Okay.
If you can draw the distinction between the greenfield sites where it is a potential problem where they just up and leave, and then the site could never be repurposed for another commercial use. That's where I think the history of some of that comes from.
Good info. That seems sound.
Yeah.
Everyone in agreement?
Yes, sir.
All right. What else do we have to look at? Anyone have anything else?
I have a couple questions. What is the overall percentage increase or decrease of solar from the March application? Is it the same amount exactly, or is it a slight increase, or?
It's definitely a slight increase. I would say maybe as much as a quarter larger. Probably not much more than that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what is the construction time frame for this project of the solar project? I've been surprised I haven't seen anything yet.
Well, we don't own the property yet.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, we're going through the
Still-
financing, we're still
Okay.
setting financing up right now.
Okay.
But
Coming
we-
soon?
Coming soon to a lighted
soon?
field near you.
It's in your neighborhood.
I think that we're probably gonna close in January, move,
The
get started.
2020 construction.
Yeah.
We got our sign permit, so you'll see the sign going up.
And unrelated, but sort of related, but not related to this specific application, but has there been any further progress with DPW, the state,
Yes.
the Mass
Yes.
DOT, there I am.
Right.
DOT.
Yeah, we're in the final throes of just the widening portion of those permits. And
Did
we're in the last
they
5.
agree on a lane, a turning lane, like
There's a
we
turning
discussed?
lane.
There is a
Yes.
turning lane,
Yeah.
oh, good.
Yeah. But I think they've already approved alignment, realignment.
I promise I'll get to you. Just hold on.
Okay.
And so we're real close. Yeah.
Anything with the traffic light? Are they gonna add a turning lane?
There's going to be some retiming of that.
That
Yeah,
Easthampton
but
sites.
it'll be it's all part of the
Retiming, but on the
same.
turning lane, okay.
Yeah, it all got sort of merged into one big project.
Okay, that's all I had.
Anything from you, Jim?
Yeah, I got a
Harry?
question. When this thing's up and running, how much power is the co-op gonna take up in this thing? Is this thing running at 100%, like 80%, 70%, or,
So as I understand it, this has been sized to cover the annual use of power at the co-op. Now, obviously, we get more solar power in the summer than we do in the winter, so things have to be smoothed out. But that's what it was sized for. Can somebody confirm that? Lynn?
Yeah, Lynn and Andrew with Co-op Power. That was
so
definitely.
you got solar power, you got propane, that's what they're running this thing, right? Is that true? And electricity, obviously.
Propane for cooking, anything with flames is propane, everything else will be electric, yeah.
Okay.
Good.
Sure.
Chet, anything? At this
No.
point, I'd like to open it to the public, if everyone's okay with that. All right, I think I saw your hand first, sir. Name and address, please.
Sam Nelson, 25 Howard Ave. My understanding that the state's doing a traffic study? Is that correct? No? Because I'm sure anybody that's driven that portion of Route 10 at any point during the day can tell you that that is one of the hottest spots for accidents in town.
We did have a traffic study as part of the original special permit,
We did.
which was reviewed at length. And I think is available, right? Is that?
And part of the project that wasn't mentioned includes the realignment of Lyman Street to make it a proper T rather than, it's kind of at an off angle now. So part of the project is to pull that to a 90-degree intersection.
Okay.
And then what was just discussed was a turning lane into the property from the
Because that's now,
east.
traffic on that portion of Route 10 is absolutely atrocious.
It is, and the traffic study showed some times where it was at an essential standstill. This project presented assurances to the board, which was a part of our approval, that this is going to be a benefit to the overall scenario down there,
I'm sorry,
retiming of the lights.
Admittedly, I'm a little ignorant to the process. I wasn't here for the original meeting, and I don't know what was discussed and what the plan is for that portion of Route 10. Is it being widened into?
I think you, Alan, would be the best to.
Right, so there's a section from O'Neill, basically, where that intersection comes in, that whole intersection is getting, not the O'Neill, but the Lyman Street intersection is getting reworked, and then there's a widening of Route 10 all the way to probably roughly halfway down that field, you know, the wetland that's there. So all that's gonna be widened, there's gonna be an additional turn lane, there's some median islands to help control traffic, a through lane.
It'll
So
still
all
be a
of that's
single,
been,
still be a
it's still
single lane.
legalized, yeah. Yeah, and all of it's been approved through DOT, so Mass DOT
Will the
is involved.
speed getting reduced? Because as of right now, the speed limit there is 45, and I'm sorry, I'm a firefighter, and I can tell you exactly what happens to metal and flesh at 45 miles an hour.
It's not a planning board.
It's true, and I hesitate to envision what you're describing, horrific as it sounds. I can say that I don't, it's not something that we, as you said, have any purview over. So, and I don't know the answer
What
to the
about
question.
the impact on the wetlands on either side of it, of Route 10?
You know,
Yeah,
we
so-
looked at that extensively.
Right, and the Conservation
And the
Commission.
Conservation
that's also-
Commission reviewed it, and there was
I'm
no...
just trying to.
They're good questions,
Yeah.
honest
I do
questions.
live quite close.
Yeah, no, they're
I
good
do travel that
questions.
road every day.
Yeah. Yep. Yep. No, the Conservation Commission has addressed the wetlands. There are no impacts to the wetlands from this project at all.
I strongly recommend, Easthampton Media has videos, I think, of the past of our meeting that was involved with them, so you can see what was discussed. The materials from
Plans
the
are posted, yeah, the
proposal
plans are posted online too, if you
on the
want to dig them up, they're there.
site. And I would, if it was me and I was there, I would do it.
Yeah.
So has this already been 100% approved by the board?
Yeah, the special permit has been approved. This is part of that, our condition too, is that they didn't have all the ducks in the row with regard to the solar component there. So this is sort of an after the fact, we're just looking at the solar component. But the board's been assured that this project is going to be beneficial, and I'm pretty thumbs up. Any other questions? No? Okay. So we talked about coming up with an approval. I don't think we need to go through the meeting of the special permit, all the items in a special permit, and then it matches it to you, because we've done that already.
Correct.
We're just saying that the board, we're coming with a finding that the board accepts and approves the solar array plans as presented.
Yep, so the technical term is that, the applicant had to submit for review and approval these plans. And so you are just voting to approve the plans submitted for this meeting. And so, as Attorney Seawald said, that will be the plan set that carries forward for the building commissioner's review.
I have only one piece of hesitancy, and it's minor in the extreme, and I don't think it's enough for me to, I'd still vote in favor of it tonight, but there's not a completed lighting plan. I just throw that out there to everyone if that's
I
an
was
issue.
looking at that myself.
Well, I
The
think,
lighting plan.
We can always bring the
It's
lighting
like I
plan.
said, for me, it's not enough to stop it. I would still vote in favor of it. Talking is important, though. I always bring things up. So,
well,
Yeah, I
just
mean, we can make it contingent
So
on
the stuff-
the lighting plan being submitted within the next few days or something. Is that
Yeah.
something
Yeah,
we can do?
I can
Yeah.
submit it tomorrow, we've got it.
and I think part that may hopefully make you feel more comfortable, and I'm looking to Jeff to just confirm this, but the initial photometric plan and the way the ordinance is structured is that any light produced on this property is not supposed to shine over the property line. And so I think that would be what you can confirm, Jeff, that even with the photometric being revised, that's still being met. And I think that's the photometric plan test usually, is that any new lights on a property don't cast beyond the property line.
Right.
So I think
I don't really see how this would change that unless you're adding a significant amount of additional lights, which are.
And these are almost more dark sky compliant than a
Right.
pole light.
That's what I would think too, this you've got canopy.
So any lighting that was there, nothing else has been added to that? It stayed the same?
Correct. Yeah, we eliminated some poles because we could locate stuff under the canopies.
Okay.
Which makes sense.
So I guess then, if there's no further discussion, we're looking for a motion to approve the submitted solar plan for River Valley Co-op.
Yep, I move to approve the final solar design plans that meet condition 2 of the special permit granted on March 19th at 228 and 232 Northampton Street.
Second?
That was well done, just want to say that. All in favor? Aye. Any against or abstentions? It's unanimous, congratulations.
Thank you. Repeat it so I can keep it in.
All right, now I know this is rough with me, but we're gonna make a rapid transition right into our next topic, so that we can all move right along. Do you have any questions, or is there anything I don't think you
No,
have
I'm
to
just
sign?
getting ready for the next one.
Okay, you're involved?
Yeah, I'm involved.
All right, so here's what we're gonna do. I just wanna, again, I love my little monologues, how I love to hear myself speak.
Yes, I know.
Holistic Industries had a special permit with us, which, for medical marijuana, which we approved, and now it looks like you're converting to recreational marijuana. Go ahead and make your
Can
presentation.
I, before the presentation gets started, can I ask a question?
Please.
We've had previous discussions at previous meetings about modifying the number of available permits.
Yes.
How has that?
I heard that the equity
Progress.
fell through, that it had not happened.
Okay.
That's what I've had, that we're still at 6 licenses.
We are still at 6 available licenses, or 6 licenses total, of which 4 are still available for recreational.
the planning board has granted 3 special
3.
permits, yeah.
Okay, so we're at 3 and there's 3 available.
Correct.
Thank you.
And this
3 and 3.
is really one of them. It was medical, right? Holistic was one of the granted ones.
Ballistic was just medical, so
It was
it's
medical.
not it's not an adult
Part of
use
the
license.
recreational thing.
There are 3 adult use
Yeah.
retails,
Have already been
yeah.
without
So-
liberty.
Yeah,
Okay.
without liberty. Yeah.
Okay. Anything?
No, thank you. I just wanted to clarify.
We're ready.
Thank you, Jay. So Alan Seawald again, I represent Holistic Industries. As you know, Holistic Industries came before you, I believe it was last year, and was granted a special permit for medical marijuana. At that time, we presented site plans, we presented traffic study that included the recreational component, because we knew we were going to get to adult use at some point. And so I would suggest that the findings you made on the medical side are just as valid on this side. As Mark will show you in a minute, the site plan has not changed really. The one major change in the site plan is that we've leased some parking spaces next door, and we've added a walkway from the property next door for overflow parking, and Mark's going to appear at this door any second. There he is.
I like the room upstairs better.
Yeah, we do too.
So
So,
where's the new parking?
So if I can ask Mark to take over.
Sure.
Oh, here.
Thank you. Good evening, Mark Reed again. So, as Attorney Seawald said, there is really no change to the site plans were previously submitted, with the exception of a couple of minor changes. And I can just go through the site plan, which I have copies, Genevieve, of not only full-size set, but 11/17s for you.
Were they revised since this?
Yes.
Yes.
If you can distribute them now.
No, helpful.
Absolutely.
Can I take it?
They were minor revisions, if I understood correctly.
Even though I'm on top of it. Even more on.
Will you describe the revised plan, Mark, as soon as they have everything?
Sure. Here's a full-size copy for the board. On the paper.
For the record.
Yeah, right. So, what I can describe here, changes relative to the site.
Can you describe the changes that are new tonight versus what
Correct.
was in the planning board packet first?
Correct.
What,
So tonight, what I emailed Jeff and you all this afternoon was the change in 3 concrete pads located in the inner corner of the back of the building. One concrete pad would be for the HVAC units, compressors. The second concrete pad, which is right in the corner of the building, would be for a generator, which is required by the state for backup power. And a 4x7 concrete pad for propane. Because they also have to have a backup in case natural gas is not available.
Okay.
Redundancy. So those are the changes that are shown on the site itself.
Okay.
Within your packet was a change in the landscape plan to add 2 landscape islands in the front of the building, either side of the front steps. And they are shown on either side. It's kind of hard to see. They're just small planters showing more on the landscape plan, which is part of your original packet information that you have for that. So relative to the site, and there's the landscape plan that shows that cloud details for those 2 planters on either side of the front entry door.
Was that, the pads that you were talking about in the back here,
Yes.
that are new, are those on concrete impermeable already, or are those going as new impermeable?
One of them was existing because there was a corner of the building that was already here that had stairs that went down into the basement, which the basement was eliminated through the project. So it's a slab on grade. The other 2 are new impervious areas. One is, like I mentioned, 4x7, and the other is 5x12. Small little pads.
These changes seem exceedingly minor to me.
Yes.
No.
Yeah.
Where is the additional parking in the pathway?
So with that,
Sorry.
before you,
No.
isn't there another change to the site plan? The enclosure?
oh, okay, that was in your packet, your
Right.
original packet. Okay, yes, you're right. Thank you, Jeff. So one of the other requirements from the state was we had to provide a delivery enclosed area so that deliveries would come in, back into a gated area. Gates would be closed, secured, and then the vehicle unloaded into the building so that someone couldn't.
Gated how? Fencing?
Fence, it's all fenced.
Metal?
Chain link fence with privacy, slats all through it,
How high?
and it is 7 foot high. Yeah, 7 foot high.
Okay.
So that this is the entry door for staff and deliveries. So with that, there is a gate here which the vehicle would come back into the space. Gates would be closed and locked. There's another gate here so that this is a secured entryway for delivery of the product. And that's another change. Thank you, Jeff.
These aren't 18-wheelers, these are SUVs, custom SUVs.
Okay.
Yeah, anything small, yeah.
Deliveries were essentially happening in the rear before anyway, it just didn't have the extra security of the fencing.
Correct.
And it's just a fence, it's not enclosed with a roof or anything? It's
No,
not
no, just a fence.
Okay.
Just a fenced enclosure. No roof on it.
Do you have more of your presentation?
Just that it was previously, was it 2 parking spaces that were previously shown there?
Yes. It did take 2 parking spaces away in order to facilitate that requirement.
I don't recall off the top of my head where we were and how many were required for the facility. Can you
We have
jumpstart me?
more than adequate spacing required by zoning. We have 27, including 2 handicap spaces. Where am I? No, somewhere we have parking spaces. I think it was in the narrative that we had proposed.
Parking spaces is 29, including 2 handicap.
Yeah, so we lost 2 of those, okay? So 27 down to 27. So that it was required to have 15,
Okay.
so we had 27.
1 per
still.
300, got it.
1 per 300.
So we're still well over, and we have handicap spaces still in play.
Correct.
And we now have more parking on the...
Yes, the abutting piece, Mr. Dion's property.
Okay.
How does that work? I mean, is there a possibility that may be taken back from you at some point? or-
At some point, they will. I mean, we did this because we were concerned that, particularly early on, there might be a greater demand. I think that once, and we do have Jason Adams from McMahon here, if you have any questions for him. But I believe the thinking was that after a little bit, things are going to calm down and it's not going to be as busy, and we'll relinquish those spots. But
Right. So those spots are located here. And we provided a temporary, because it may go away, gravel path between the 2 sites through an agreement with Mr. Dion.
So is the fence is not connected at this point? Is there a fence that we had specified?
Correct. So there would be a gate, an opening in that gate to allow for that. If in the future it's not needed, or the additional parking, then that gate or the fence would be enclosed. Because Mr. Dion still.
Describe what we're talking about for a gate. So there is, the fence is going up as was stipulated, and you're going to put some sort of like sliding door in it or something?
No, it'll just be an opening, just in the walkway, the gravel walkway.
And when you decide to stop using it, you
5
have a
foot.
fencing company come in and just close it up?
Close it up. Right. Yeah, it's only a 5-foot wide gravel walkway. Between the 2 properties.
Anything else?
the one other thing that the applicant wanted to put before you was the mural on the side of the building.
Tell us about it.
Wow, that was part of the package, something over, I think. No, on the north side of the wall.
This is in your packet. So this is north facing?
I think it is the
North
facing,
Mr. Leon's property, right?
no, it's facing on the other side.
Yeah, it's facing north.
Oh, north, okay, I'm sorry.
That's, yeah, okay.
So it's on this side.
Okay.
Thank you.
Visible from the road, coming, what, south on Lexington Street?
Yeah, correct.
Okay. Do you see anything that trips our sign ordinance up with that?
I mean, it's pretty big, but I mean,
It is big, but I don't.
is there, what are the requirements for a sign? I know that at Versailles we made them do a smaller sign.
Yeah, generally speaking, it has to be a certain percentage of the facade. So I apologize because I didn't run any calculation of this. Certainly can be done to confirm that it doesn't exceed the size of the zoning, but that's a large facade area.
It is.
That gives you the overall square footage, and then I think it's 10% is the size of a sign that can be allocated with that wall.
I think this is
basically.
a good opportunity to note, I heard that there was still a piece of your permitting that you require before we can go forward, is that correct? Am I wrong about that, Jeff?
Yeah, so the way the zoning is structured is that the applicant has to have the provisional license issued from the Cannabis Commission before the planning board can vote.
Right.
Which means that we will be continuing this hearing. So I think that is one thing we can put on the plate already, is to get with Jeff to figure out what exactly the signage is, so that, you know, you're making sure that that meets it. Personally, I don't have any problem with that sign as an individual, as long as it meets the conditions of the zoning ordinance.
I'm sorry, can I interrupt? What did they need from CCT?
Provisional license.
Yeah, so
Provisional license.
we've been approved, and then there's a 90-day period before they
Which
issue.
we're in right now, actually. Do fingerprinting, background checks, which should be actually wrapped.
Get it?
Because the way it was structured is it was to box in the applicant so you get your application deemed complete with the Cannabis Commission, and that allows you to make the application to the planning board now. And so at some point we should talk maybe now about what your projected, there might be your ideal scenario, but what you try to project for the Cannabis Commission to issue the provisional.
I'm hoping to hit their December meeting. We're not going to make a November meeting. That's, I think, was this week. We're looking for the December meeting to get voted on.
And do you have any, if I may, sorry,
Please,
if you have any sense of when in December they meet?
18th.
Okay.
That's the 18th.
The way the planning board has handled this, so it's a little bit of a jockeying around. There's a holiday obviously in December, but in the past the planning board has picked a date, and once they pick the date they have to convene here and you would come to give an update whether you've achieved the provisional or not. That's the check-in. But
And that would be the date at which, given that everything falls in order, we approve the special permit, given that that's where we're going with it. So we will need to meet again, and I can tell you I'll certainly do personally everything I can to find a date that's going to make it happen. We like to support our businesses here in Easthampton.
yeah, the trick will be is if for example, if the Cannabis Commission meets on December 18th, then the following week is basically, I would consider not a meeting week.
Yeah, I'd say so, yeah. That's
We
fair.
can talk about that at some point whenever.
But
makes
the
sense.
reason I sort of threw that in at that time, and it's a good idea to talk about it, I'm sorry if it's a bit of a curveball, but it's important to really try to isolate the things where we have some time now to focus on some things, and the sign is one of them, and maybe we can come up with some others and just make note of it, so.
So if I would recommend that the board talk about the applicant's plan for the first opening day, the first couple of months, and get a clear understanding of that. That was something that was not presented to the board the first time. And then I acknowledge that Attorney Seawald suggested that you take the same findings you made previously, but I think you should have a presentation from the consultant on traffic and the counts, and because it's being represented.
I completely agree, and I definitely want to hear it. And I even want to go into a few more minutia details just to cover it so that because we really are, this is another special permit process. We can't just wave a magic wand. Things like how the trash is handled, a little bit of a talk about security again.
No.
So you just got hit with a whole bunch of things. Do you want to present to us on those topics, or do you want me to call it a specific one?
Go for it. We have the head of security here, so
Great.
we're ready for that. So
I can tell you the dumpster enclosure, trash enclosure, is still in the same location with enclosed fencing around it, so that has not changed.
Okay.
Provisions for, how different for lighting and especially snow removal, that's.
Yeah, we've
One big-
accounted for all that
You
in
have?
our previous plans, and it has
As
not
to
changed.
where
It
it's
hasn't
gonna
changed. Can you
be.
show us where the snow
Sure.
removal will be again, just for the camera and the audience?
Yep. So snow removal is here, Chad.
Yeah.
We've got snow removal here, and at the ends of the two parking areas, fields. So those are been approved and within the buffer zone of Conservation Commission and so forth.
Oh, they have.
They have, yes.
You said lighting hasn't changed either. We may as
Lighting
well
has
cross
not
that off
changed.
the list.
That's not changed?
Correct. So-
Downward facing lights.
Right.
You want to tell us a little bit about it?
So relative to the site itself, the site construction has been completed. It was completed last week, so that if you go out to the site now, you can take the plan and see that it mirrors what the plan shows. We've been doing reports. I've been doing weekly inspections and reports and providing them to Jeff and other departments within the town, as well as Conservation Commission as part of the report or conditions report project. The rain garden's been installed, the lighting posts, the stanchions, shoebox style, downward lighting.
What about the new parking area?
So that the new parking area was existing. There is no lighting being proposed over to the new parking area. It's all existing on Mr. Dion's property. So that's all existing lighting. There's no new lighting being proposed on Mr. Dion's property. The only thing that was done on Mr. Dion's property was it was striped. As you know, he has a auto repair business as well as inspections. So he does car inspections. So there's additional striping, excuse me, for cars entering his inspection bays and work that he's done to better handle traffic flow on his property. But the spaces have been delineated. They're in yellow paint for use by Holistic.
Remind me what we talked about for hours of operation, and is that going to change at all with recreational?
I don't think it's gonna change with recreation.
And what is it now?
I believe we put like 10 to 8, right? 10 to 8, I believe is what.
So 8 p.m.?
Yeah.
So on some seasons after dark, and there's no lighting on the alternative. Granted, that's sort of overflow.
There's existing lighting.
Existing lighting.
Existing
No,
lighting.
we're not adding any, yeah.
What it's also is, our intent I think is to have employees park in the overflow to help minimize traffic flow for Mr. Dion. At his request, he asked for that.
Okay.
So it probably won't have as much individuals walking through in a poorly lighted situation.
Okay.
But it's well lit. I mean, I just checked it out driving in tonight. It's well lit.
But there's no new lighting.
About
It's
how
all
many
existing.
employees do you have on a typical shift on like the max number?
The max number around 10, that would be including of your management as well. So about 10, I mean, with the expected traffic that we are anticipating right off the bat, I mean, that could fluctuate later on, but to start right off the bat, I think the maximum we would have is probably scheduled on a Friday, Saturday, at around 10 employees
That
total.
includes adult use.
That would include adult use. That actually might be less if it was just to remain medical.
So that would be up to 10 employee vehicles on site at any one time?
Correct,
And
which
that
is
includes
actually the amount of
management?
space that would include management as well. The only other person we would have is maybe obviously a security employee during operational hours as well. So at max, I guess if we wanted to include that, it would be about 11.
And it's the intent to put our employees over on the next property,
Yeah.
put them all the way to the,
Just like this.
So,
right, and so,
I would love a dog and pony show from a guy that got on a plane and came all the way from Europe on the flow, how you walk through, how security is handled, how the cameras are handled, whole kit and caboodle. What do you got?
It's amazing that you
Well, I can, yeah, right? So we can actually make that happen.
well, no pressure, right? No
You
pressure.
want an accent or?
Yeah, right?
I couldn't do the accent sucks. There you go.
This is all security stuff. Actually, I'll make this.
Would you just introduce yourself?
Yes, I'm Vince Canals, actually Director of Security for Holistic Industries on the National. I've been involved with the company now for almost 4 years. I actually have been through numerous processes with them in multiple states right now. So we provide security in a number of different locations as well. So not our first rodeo in this space as far as security is concerned and trying to implement. We've actually grown with the industry, so that's been another plus as far as it's concerned. As you know, it's a new entity in and of itself, so there's a lot of regulation that's started today, kind of evolving. Some have been gotten rid of. Things just kind of change due to the nature and flow of what basically is going on within the industry. We've actually been able to kind of lead the way in some of this as well, through trial and error in some places, but primarily just kind of tooting Holistic's horn a little bit. I mean, they're extremely conscientious about security and trying to be good neighbors. We're not trying to be overly impactful or harmful to the communities that we serve. A little bit about me, 21-year retired law enforcement officer in Maryland. Actually, I serve currently as the state president for the Fraternal Order of Police in Maryland, representing 21,000 officers there. So I have counterparts throughout the country on the national level that basically I have access to as well. We hire retired law enforcement officers primarily. Next step for us as well is looking for individuals who are in the military, and then security officers with 5 to 10 years of experience in the industry in and of itself. So we try to make sure that we bring, and we hire from within the community. So that's our big thing. We're looking to get people who live here, who know the area, kind of hopefully know some of the clients, so the relationship is more personal as opposed to just some strange face that's there. And over time, the idea is that the individuals who are coming in and out of the facilities get to know who these individuals are and what they're there for. The way that these facilities are structured, you'll see we've got probably over 40 some odd cameras on the total site in and of itself, inside and outside, high definition, infrared for evening hours. That information is captured and stored and retained not only on site but off site as well. The facility is monitored 24/7, so even when the facility is closed, We have someone that's monitoring the facility to ensure that, you know, someone shows up. Actually, the company that we utilize now here will call and say, hey, there's somebody sitting on the parking lot. Do you want us to have law enforcement show up for that? And sometimes we'll just review the cameras, kind of keep an eye on it and see what's going on. But we maintain and ensure that we keep an eye on what's going on within the facilities themselves, not only outside, or not only inside, but on the outside. With regards to the additional parking and stuff and some of the concerns with how the flow of that's going to wind up occurring, what I will say is we hope, knock on wood, that we have lines down the street. The reality of the matter is that the industry here in Massachusetts is developed. So there isn't the idea that we're going to have that kind of influx hitting your community at one shot. I'm not going to say couldn't happen, but we don't believe it's going to be that high, but we'll be prepared. And part of the reason for the overflow was for that reason, to ensure that, you know, we can get people into the parking lot, get them on the facility, get them into the store, have them conduct their business, and then get them out and down the road with minimal impact. And you know, the traffic study will help kind of explain that a little bit. The other thing as well, with regards to any kind of big major rush, we have a number of processes in place as well with regards to that, utilizing staff that's currently in the facility and to kind of assist with, hey, look, you know, we need you to wait outside, or we need you to basically wait in the waiting area. If need be, we would actually bring additional security officers in to basically provide security, not only control what's going on inside, but hopefully to control traffic flow on the outside of the building, make sure that people are getting in and out. And after hours, or even after people come in and out of the stores, there's absolutely nothing. We do not allow individuals to remain on the parking lot or stay on the premises themselves to utilize the product, to sit and look at the product, do anything. We get them in, get them out, and keep them moving as far as that's concerned. The hope is, too, is that if business is that good for us, that some of the other businesses in the area will reap some of the benefit of that as well. So I can keep talking.
And I have a question for you. And obviously, I think we want to get into the whole initial plan. I'm not sure if it's you or who is going to talk about what your plan is for like the opening period. And I want to go through the flow. But while I've got you up here, you mentioned two things. You mentioned, I think, a remote monitoring system through cameras, and you also mentioned hiring local, which means clearly there's someone who's a security officer there, or someone's. At any one time, how many security officers, physical, are on site?
Normally at any facility that we wind up having, we have 6 officers that are assigned specifically to that site. Now, normally when you're talking shifts, that depends. We normally will have 1, 1.5, and I say half because there may be an overlap of some sort. But depending on the volume, we'll definitely be flexible in how that plays out. Normally, the managers that are on site provide us with some input as to whether or not they think they need more security or not at that point in time. But even during the day, when there is just a single security officer on site, the cameras are being monitored throughout the day as well. So it's not as if it's the doors open and basically it's just like, okay, let things play out. They are being randomly monitored and ensuring that, you know, the traffic flow, that things are being done correctly. If there's any issues or something seen that maybe someone else isn't seeing, you know, a call can be made into management to let them know, hey, look, you may want to keep an eye out, or we're seeing something. Is it something that we can do to help?
Now this part I think we know, and might be the last question I have for security unless someone else, but I think we just want to talk again for the audience at home so that they're assured. This stuff has to get to you and from you, in addition to via the customers. How are you providing security and tracking of materials?
Now, what I will tell you is we have in-house transport that basically will provide transportation from our facility basically to this site. The vehicles are basically nondescript, so an individual, of course, at a given time could probably sit at our Monson facility and kind of see a car coming and going and say, oh, I think that could be the transport vehicle. But the reality of the matter is that there's really it's nondescript, nothing that would give you an idea that there's any product within the vehicle. As explained here, which is similar to the Pennsylvania site, the fact that there's an enclosure is twofold. One, it's meant to basically provide the ability for an individual guards to basically come in, back the vehicle up, lock it up. Security can monitor it either through the cameras or, if need be, can step outside and just ensure that there's nobody hanging around by the bay area when they're pulling in. Product is offloaded, normally about a 20-30 minute process. It's in, it's out, back down the road, and it's over and done with before anybody knows anything even occurred. And normally it's going into a secured area within the facility, so it's not as if it's coming through the floor. So business is going on and individuals are seeing someone walking through a product. It's done in a secure environment. So keeps everyone safe.
In addition, just to talk about your inventory as well, it's all manifested. So as soon as that product is arriving at the dispensary, we have to ensure that all of these quantities are correct, and we do in fact have everything that matches the metric tags. And I mean, it's a fine detailed process, and then we check that with our system, and then we bring it into our inventory. So it is all checked before we even accept the order, and if there is anything wrong with it, we decline the order right then and there until it's fixed.
Transport receives it from the facility with the manifest outlining what they're bringing. They have to physically ensure that it matches what's contained within there. When they get it to the site, they basically review it to ensure that it all matches. And if it doesn't, it gets sent back. And notifications are handled that way. All the vehicles are GPS tracked as well, so we have a general idea of where those vehicles are basically at a given point in time. And we have communication via cell phone and other methods that we utilize to ensure that if there's any issues along the route, something's going on, that we can communicate back and forth.
As far as the vehicles, you keep trackers in the vehicle and you also keep track as they're coming in. You know which ones
we know which ones are coming. We know where they're going and what the routes, normally what the overall routes are, with the exception of some traffic issues.
Say this, I'm probably playing devil's advocate, but do you also watch the parking lot as your vehicles come in to see which vehicles are out there when those vehicles come in?
What we normally will wind up doing is there's a requirement by our transport teams of 10 to 15 minutes out before they arrive at a facility to call in and say, hey, look, we're about to pull in with product. At that point in time, whoever basically is sitting at the guard site for the facility has a requirement to ensure that the parking lot is relatively in decent order. We don't have some car sitting in a corner with a couple of guys and nobody even walked up and approached it or anything.
Are you tracking customers in terms of their vehicles?
I'm sorry?
License plates, things like that?
We don't normally check. I mean, the reality of the matter is because of the nature of the industry in and of itself, there is kind of a taboo to doing anything over and above that makes people feel uncomfortable about coming to a facility to purchase. So we don't go over and above as far as that's concerned, but we do have the ability, if an incident were to occur, to go back and actually we can pull tags. The cameras are so high definition, we can pull tags and usually get a lot of detailed information that we can provide to law enforcement if something did wind up taking place.
Right, that's all I really had to ask on that.
Any questions about security?
None.
Then next dog and pony show. Thank you, sir. Well played. You may get pulled up for more. Tell me about the flow of this. How does someone come in? Where do they go? What do they do?
Well, that would be me. Hello, Ella Wag. I'm the National Retail Director for Holistic Industries. I mean, I'll keep it pretty basic, but as you enter, there is a security foyer or a man trap.
Where?
Oh gosh, okay. I'll be honest, this is not my area of expertise with, yeah, up here would be great.
Is that a floor plan? No, I do not have a floor plan up there.
Exterior.
Yeah, it's all exterior up there.
How about this one?
How about that one, Jeff?
I can take that.
That's the basics.
That's your A&Rs unsigned?
Okay, so obviously there is a security
Oh, they're still
foyer
there, okay.
here that you see. So people will enter here and check in with security. This is where their identification is checked. They are checked into our point of sale system.
How many
And
people will that hold?
right here, there's going to be a security, so it would just be one person in the security foyer in this area. So it's a man trap, so before you enter this, you cannot, the security is going to have to let you into the sales floor of the dispensary. So you're checked in here with security, all your credentials are checked, you're checked into the POS system. Once you enter, you have a lobby area where we actually normally staff a concierge person. This is someone who can go over any questions you may have in the menu. If it's your first time in the dispensary and you're not really sure where you're going, our concierge is going to be able to assist you with directing traffic. We do plan on doing online orders, as I believe a lot of dispensaries do here, so that person would also help direct traffic to hopefully eliminate some of the long lines and wait times. You know, we'll direct people over to pick up their online orders. And then as you can see here, we've got, you know, our consultation area where budtenders or wellness guides will then help patients and go over all the products that we carry and just kind of help pick the regimen that's going to work best for you. And then, I mean, that's the flow in terms of public.
Is there a walking flow?
Yeah, so if you see here, you see that we have these, they're display cases. They're actually going to be, they're remote so we can move them. This can also help form lines. I'm hoping that we'll have a decent turnover. Our average wait time for someone who's been in and knows what they're looking for is honestly less than 10 minutes. Obviously, a new patient, it takes a little bit more time to just discuss and go over our entire product line with them. But we can actually move these display cases to help form lines. We'll also obviously have stanchions and things like that in the back if necessary, but I'm hoping that we won't have lines that are that long, that we necessarily need those. But yeah, our display cases also act as basically line formations and stanchions and things like that.
Went a bit fast for me, so I may have missed it.
I'm sorry.
Separation of medical and recreational, and also where's the POS?
Yes, okay, so as you can see, this counter right here, we have about 12 terminals along here, so that is our point of sale system, so we'll have about 12 terminals there. Medical, we'll just have a sign that says like medical here, we'll separate that line. Medical obviously takes priority, they do not wait in the same line as adult use customers. This is of course hoping that we are adult use. But medical will be separate as well as online pickup. So they will have a designated terminal in the same U-shaped counter that we have. There'll just be signs that say medical form line here and we'll serve you here, and then online pickup will be everywhere else, and then adult use would be the remainder of the terminals.
So at this juncture, you've got some flexibility in terms of where that stuff's going to be. It really isn't
exactly.
set up, or it's rather designed
it really
to
is
be
just
fluid.
exactly, so that we have the capability and flexibility to move around if necessary. Obviously, upon opening, we don't know what we might get more of. Who knows? We might actually end up seeing a lot more medical patients than we do, in which case I can then say, these 4 terminals are for medical and we only need this many for adult use. We don't want to make it a permanent structure or say this is where you go, because we just don't know what kind of traffic we're going to get and the variety between adult use and medical patients.
So you can flip those that quickly from adult use to medical, that
yeah, because the
if you can see, well, we're going to have more medical, you can flip that quickly.
Yeah. It really is just necessarily me putting signage up and saying, you know, and this is where our concierge comes into play and say, you know, medical serving over here, you medical or adult use, this line forms here. This is where we can incorporate stanchion signage and things like that. And we can also incorporate signage on top of our display cases that will be on wheels so that we can move them to help form lines as well.
So your display cases are interactable. They could be adult use or they could be medical?
Correct, yes.
Well,
they're just display cases. These are just something that we can move to help form lines.
Right, but you can form lines, but I mean, you can direct medical and adult. It looks like almost at a snap of a finger.
Why don't you explain the concierge portion, just so that they understand like how people are being told where to go.
Yeah, I mean, okay, so when they come in and we ask them if they're adult use or they're medical, and we ask if they've done an online pickup, it's basically the first stop that you come into the dispensary. We can hand you a menu, we'll discuss anything that you need, but the concierge is really directing every bit of traffic that enters the dispensary. So not only are you checking in with security here, that point of check-in is literally just checking your credentials and checking that you have a valid ID. We're checking you in the POS, and then you're welcomed by this warm, friendly, incredible concierge person who's going to help direct all the traffic into the store.
And some of the other things, just so you're aware too, as far as traffic within the facility, the concierge, the manager on the floor, the security officer are all, you're not going to just have a free-for-all just kind of floating around in this area either. It's, individuals will have the ability to come in to conduct their business. If, depending on how the flow is going at that point, slow it down, speed it up, depending on what the level of...
Let's talk about that, and I'd like to direct this to you.
Yeah.
So you come in to the security and take the ID, and then you go to the concierge. Concierge is step 2, security
concierge is step 2, correct.
And can you touch with your finger where security is? It's that right?
In here.
And it's a man trap.
Correct.
And you have to leave that area to go to the concierge. And the
Yes.
concierge is where?
Which is right here. So
Right
this
there.
lobby area, I mean, they're not really stationed in one area. They're remote as well.
And so the person taking security is really your first stopgap in regulating flow, which means that if there's a line of people, where's that line form? It's before security, right?
Not necessarily, I mean, it would form in here, I mean, if there is that much flow that goes out the building, but I doubt that there will be, it would be forming in here. And the security's gonna have cameras to let people, the flow
How
into the
many will you allow
dispensary.
into that man trap?
4.
I would say, yeah, probably 4 into the man shop in a line at one time. Into the dispensary, obviously it depends on the amount of people that I would have staffed on any given day. You don't want the staff to be necessarily outnumbered significantly. I would probably normally say I allow 2 to 3 people in the dispensary per one wellness guide or bud tender that I have staffed.
It's a brilliant day. It's Saturday. A busload of people just got off. They're excited, and there's 80 people waiting. You're letting 4 in. What happens to the other 76?
We love the idea.
I love the idea of that, and I would actually love for that to happen.
Yeah. No, but that's where, and part of the conversation that we were having, which is a big Ken, when you're now talking about the outside of the facility, if we know, and normally in certain circumstances where that we know that there's a bus of 80 coming, we are advised fully in advance that, hey, look, we've got this number of people coming. There's a couple of different variations and options that we've looked at with regards to the other 76. One is basically designating an area within the parking lot where those individuals would basically just be told to sit and wait. We would then have either part of the staff or the additional security officer that we would bring in, basically, go out and say, hey, look, we're prepared to bring you in now at this point, and the next 4, the next 5, whatever we can handle at that point in time. The other option that we looked at, or we're looking at as well, is the possibility of technology. I mean, there's so many new apps and everything out there that we can ultimately sit back and tell them, hey, look, you're getting checked in, you can go conduct some other business nearby, don't go too far, you'll get alerted 10 to 15 minutes out to come in, and you're almost up, and your number's getting ready to get called, which will provide them the ability to then come back.
So there's line queuing and also possibly asking people to wait in their cars and take a number with technology alerting them or something?
So I mean, some options that we're looking at. I mean, we have not run into, and I can tell you that issue as of yet, but we had such an overflow of individuals that we couldn't control it. Normally we can tell people, hey, look, it's busy right now, it's going to slow down in an hour or two, if you want to come back. And most people are, okay, no problem, I'll come back in about an hour or two. You also have to understand as it matures as well, with some of the online ordering and things of that nature, the process moves relatively fast. The new clients are the ones who are ultimately going to be a little bit longer to
Online
console.
ordering has just, it's taken over. Everyone's just walking in and picked up, kind of on to the point that you were saying too, people don't necessarily, they don't want to be known that they're coming in to purchase sometimes, so they just want to come in and get out. And so from what I've seen so far in the Massachusetts market is that online ordering has just taken over. The amount of people that we actually see coming in, they tend to be new patients. They may come in and visit once or twice, and then they resort to online ordering.
Well,
So it's
online
easier for them.
ordering, not just there, just in every industry now, especially in Massachusetts.
Yeah.
Everybody wants to order online and have it either delivered, or they'll come in and they want to get in.
People are busy, people don't necessarily have the time anymore, so.
One other thing with regards to the floor plan, so we were talking about transport. This back area is actually staff and employees, the ball area and where everything is being done. So it's segregated out from the floor itself, so everything else is, here on the floor, the majority of the rest of it takes place in the back.
So any new product needed comes from there,
this area.
and goes back to the floor.
And then at the end of the day, everything goes back.
To the
Now give me the number again. What's the max that you anticipate for customers that you'll have inside the room at any one time? Not in the 4 check room, but on the main floor.
Normally, and I think part of the policy that we had originally developed, and it fluctuates from time to time, is depending on each bud tender or employee that we have on the floor, it's 2 to 3 that we would allow to basically be within the facility at any
Only
point
2 and 3?
So,
like I said, I could be, that's changed.
Sorry,
Yeah.
I'm Josh again. Okay, so 8 to 1 is the ratio that sort of where our fulfillment model and everything sort of is planned for. We don't anticipate there being 80 to 100 people in the store. Again, if we were the first store in in this part of the state, it'd be a different story. But 8 to 1 is comfortable, doesn't break our fulfillment model, our security model.
So you might have 20 to 25 people in the room at any one time.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I hope we do.
But, I will say, I go by Netta every day.
Oh, I'm sorry, Jim.
And the lines just aren't there anymore. I mean, there are short lines every now and then on the weekends, but
We felt bad for the traffic guys when we drove by there today. They looked so cold standing outside not doing a whole lot.
Okay, so I've put in my order online. When I come up, do I have to wait until I can be allowed in, or do I get to say, my order's already ready, can I just go get it?
No, you can just walk in and get it.
Just walk in and
Yeah.
get it? Just tell whoever
But you have
got
to
an order?
show them your ID.
But you, oh yeah, everyone has to still get their
obviously,
credentials
but-
checked. But no, if you've
Yeah.
ordered online and you're
Right.
not waiting to speak to a wellness guide or a bud tender, of course, you can just come and pick up your order and leave.
It's an expedited
That's the whole
process.
point of
Yeah.
doing the online ordering, and that's the additional benefit to that.
We have our first adult use store is in Los Angeles, and it's got 7 parking spots, and it's sort of in a cannabis desert, if you will. There's about 13 banned communities, and then this little part's called the Harbor Gateway, and we see 500-600 patients a day. Ella created that model, and it never, there was never a tremendous backlog, tremendous line.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Very good.
I have no further questions regarding model. Do you have anything you want to add?
No, but I'm curious where you're gonna go next.
Oh, there's so many.
We are too.
Yeah, and then I'll put Randy to you. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, could you tell us the end of the day procedure?
I'm sorry?
At the end of the day, what do you do?
At the end of the day. Okay, well,
You're all
the product-
done, you got stuff inside your display cases and all that. What do you do with all that stuff, and how do you go about shutting this whole thing down?
Okay, so everything from the sales floor will be put onto rolling racks. We will then roll that product back into the vault where it is kept overnight.
All right, so you've got 2 people doing this, working together, and they're under
Yeah,
camera and all that kind of thing, and
Exactly.
weight and all that stuff. Is that what you do?
Everything
Oh, yeah.
is under camera.
As you can see, everything will always be
I'm
on
just curious to
camera,
see how
yeah.
your end of the day procedure is compared to somebody else that we had here.
No, of course. So yeah, all of our product will be kept in the vault.
It sounds the same.
What?
It sounds like it's the same procedure.
Probably, and then obviously
that-
our managers do all the cash handling, that's.
Is that
that's how
state
it's done.
control, or is that something you just do? Is that something you have to comply with, or is that something you just do?
I think the
A
state,
little bit of both. and
I think the state
it's-
requires it to be secured when the
When it's
facility's
not during
operating.
operational hours, it needs to be in a.
No, I mean,
limited
the
access
closing
area.
down of the whole facility, is that a state mandated thing, or is that something you're just gonna do?
Both.
Both.
Both?
I mean, we since we operate in a number of states, we adhere to the the highest common denominator, which in most cases is Massachusetts.
One question.
And so, I don't know if that answers your question.
Uh,
A lot,
Okay.
Chad, hold on one second. I want to give it to Chris.
Go ahead.
One question about the entry doors. I see there's 2 doors. One I imagine is an entry and one's an exit once you get past security.
Here?
Yep. Are they both entry doors, or is one specifically an in and one specifically an out? And are they locked?
They are locked, they are controlled by the person
Security.
sitting in security, yes, and I believe one is an entrance and one is an exit. Yeah, I wish I could tell you which one is which. I'm not exactly sure, but yes, that is the way it is.
right side.
Is it
Down below is entry.
Entry and exit.
Okay, did you want to?
Well, I just know that you're saying that all the product goes back into the vault.
Sorry.
I heard someone, when they were in one of them, they were worried about the freshness of the stock. Coming in today and, it's going in and out. How does that kept? Do you keep a watch as to whether it stays fresh?
Yeah, of course. So obviously light is a huge thing, and obviously
Right.
climate control. So our vault is climate controlled as well. Most of the product we do get in mass obviously is prepackaged. So a lot of it is in opaque packaging that doesn't allow light through.
Right.
So
It's child sealed.
it's child sealed, tamper evident. But the vault is climate controlled, and it's got an automatic light sensor. So the light will go off in that room if no one is in there.
So the time that it would take for something to start deteriorating, it may
It's-
never happen?
It depends on the product. This is more specifically
what I'm
speaking
asking.
about dry leaf cannabis or flower, however you want, whatever terminology you prefer. That's really the only thing that could deteriorate based, or edibles and concentrates, but that's why we have refrigeration and things like that where those items are stored.
Okay.
So it's constantly monitored
I'm gonna-
anyways.
I'm gonna move us
Yes, there's always
forward
quality
a little
control.
bit here, I think. Jeff, I want to, I can tell you're brewing on something, but we got a couple things. Harry wants to talk about waste in the dumpster. We want to talk about that. I just want to talk about smell. I know you're not growing.
Of course.
And then I want to come back and hear what you...
Yeah, I think you gotta get parking and traffic addressed, and then as much as possible get to the people, the public.
It's a busy night.
I just wanna make sure.
We're trying, we'll get all the I's dotted and T's crossed. So why don't we start with the dumpster? Tell us about how you're handling trash and waste.
So cannabis waste specifically, we're most likely going to look into working with a company to come and actually pick that up. So only regular waste is going to be put into the trash dumpsters. We actually met with someone briefly today who's currently working with GTI and a few other cannabis dispensaries in the local area. So there will be no cannabis waste at all placed in the regular waste bins.
Right. And the dumpster located on the design is, I think he showed me before. I think you pointed it out to me earlier.
Yeah, we know where it is.
Okay. And regular pickups,
South
do you have any questions about that beyond that?
No.
Okay. Smell, I just want to touch on this real quick before we do get into the difficult issue of traffic. You're not growing on site.
Correct.
Everything is packaged.
Yep.
How do you anticipate the smell to be a nuisance?
I don't believe you have to have any whiff of cannabis unless you're inside the store, and even inside the store, it's almost non-existent.
Okay.
Again, you can't open jars, you know, and we have the luxury of having our production facility in Monson, so not a far drive. That affords us the ability to limit what's in the vault, what could go bad. And you know, you could easily prepackage more product and have it sent over, as opposed to having bulk product there prepackaged.
Yeah.
So we've never, you know, with 10 stores around the country, we've never received one smell complaint.
Okay. Given that you're not growing, it's not a particular concern to me. Is it a concern to anyone on this board that they feel the need to discuss it further? Then let's move into traffic. We have a specialist here, and I saw Jeff give you a surreptitious glance that you're being underutilized in this meeting. Tell us all about it.
So far. Is it all right if I present
Please
here?
do. Yeah.
For the record, my name is Jason Adams. I'm a traffic engineer with McMahon Associates. We've been working with the project team here since they came in originally last year. So we completed a traffic impact study that looked at the trip generation of the project site to understand the number of vehicles that we'd expect to come in and out. And that generally is going to be outside of the opening period. Certainly the opening period may have a bit of a spike, but our study in general is going to look at the average conditions. So we look at the weekday afternoon peak period, and we look at the Saturday midday peak period. Those are the two typical peaks of a project like this. We took a look at the adjacent street traffic during those time periods. We collected manual turn movement counts at what was the existing site before this came in.
Is this the original medical review you're doing? It's not an additional
It is
adult
not an
use?
additional, the trip generation that was used during that original medical included the idea that this was going to be an adult use.
So you're representing to
I
us
am
right now
representing,
what
yes.
you presented.
So happy to answer any additional
No,
questions.
it's okay, please continue. I just wanted to make that clear.
Right.
I mean, again, in our special permit meeting with most of you guys, we pointed out that you know,
Yes.
we hired them to do an adult use traffic study.
Yeah, it was really hard to pull out medical because there just wasn't
Correct.
a lot of data on medical.
Give us the numbers.
Great. And so the study also looks at the safety of the area, completing a review of the available site distance of the driveways to make sure that the drivers coming in and out can have enough visibility to make those turning maneuvers. And we looked at the crash data of the surrounding area to understand if there's any existing safety issues. And certainly there are crashes that take place along the roadway. I think we already spoke to that earlier.
Is that what I saw?
And what we try to do is understand if that's an unreasonable amount of crashes given the traffic volumes of the area. Our trip generation shows that during the weekday afternoon peak period, so a typical weekday, that the site would generate approximately an additional 10 entering and 10 exiting vehicles above what was previously on this site. So it's a total of about 25 to 30 vehicle trips that enter and 25 to 30 that exit during the weekday afternoon peak hour. But when compared to what was previously there before this project is moving forward, It's only an increase of about 10. So overall, we'd expect a vehicle every about 2 minutes to enter and 2 minutes to exit. Certainly, there's not going to be a lot of employee coming and going during those peak periods. Those are typically going to be outside of the peaks. Saturday is a bit busier. Saturday it looks to be about 45 to 50 vehicles that would enter and 45 to 50 that would exit. So not quite a vehicle every minute, but around that, every minute on average, you'd probably expect to see a vehicle enter and a vehicle exit.
When I read this study, I saw, I think, that you had, when you originally put it together, accounted for the issue we talked about earlier, actually, River Valley Co-op and the
Correct.
changes that we're going to go in that general area. Can you tell me how your study and how this business you think is going to influence and interact overall with Northampton Street? Besides, you just said, we're talking 40 on the weekends, 10 in the weekday.
Right.
When they make the changes in the lights, how's that going to affect this?
So this project itself, once, when you're exiting the site, certainly there's going to be a certain number that go north. And certain number that's going to go south. So even those numbers that I'm presenting, you're not going to see that number at any one intersection. And again, I'm also talking about over the course of an entire hour. So really, if you're adding all of the traffic towards, north towards the O'Neill intersection, a vehicle a minute is not perceptible. That's the difference between a Tuesday and a Wednesday, that you wouldn't even notice that difference. We analyzed the intersection to the south, the Highland Avenue intersection. That intersection, when we look at the level of service, we don't see any change from what it would be without this project to what we'd expect to be with that project.
Did I see some, this is, you use an A, B, C, T.
Right.
It makes it very easy. I could have sworn I saw some things go from like C to D or B to C.
There are no, so there are changes from what's out there today, the existing, and then what we do is we grow those traffic volumes out into a future year. So that accounts for the River Valley market, that accounts for general growth in the area. So there are some changes from what is there today to what there will be in the future, but our analysis does not show that there will be any change from a future condition without this project to a future condition with this project. So there will be, increases in delay, minor increases in delay, a couple seconds.
Northampton Street's getting tougher and tougher.
It is, and certainly there's a good bit of development, but I think it's been mentioned earlier, there's also opportunity for some of these vehicles to visit multiple areas. It's not like every trip to this site is going to be unique, from somewhere outside of this area. There will be the vehicles traveling down that may go to the Cumberland Farms and stop in here. They may go to go up and go to the Cumberland Farms. There's a lot of interaction. I think that's, it's generally a positive. Certainly, you want to try to limit things where you can, but it fits in well within the context of the roadway, in that there are other developments of similar style to this, and therefore you get those trips that come and may visit multiple stops along the way.
Can you tell me just a little bit about the egress, the entryway, and you might be involved in this too, and how the traffic might affect that, open sight lines coming in?
Sure. So so what we do is we look at the available sight distance. There's a requirement based on the speed of the roadway that we want to be able to meet, so that on a roadway with these speeds, 40 to 45 miles per hour, that you need to be able to see at least 350 feet in either direction. Here, given the generally straight nature of the roadway, you can see over 500 feet. So it's well in excess of what would be required. And that means that all the vehicles traveling past the site are able to see an exiting vehicle. So when a car is coming out, you're able to appropriately slow down as needed to avoid collision. And also you have plenty of room for those vehicles that are exiting the site to make an appropriate decision. It's not to say that someone won't make an inappropriate decision, but the information is available, and as engineers, that's what we're looking to ensure, is that there's a reasonable expectation that they will be able to safely enter and exit this site. So that site distance is more than adequate there. The site does benefit from having two driveways, so there's never going to be a situation where you have multiple cars backed up at just one driveway. So you kind of remove some of that potential anxiety if you're waiting in a line of cars to turn. You have another option at another driveway. And so therefore those vehicles get distributed evenly. And again, when we're talking about an exiting vehicle every 1 or 2 minutes, you're really not going to see a backup of cars at that area.
Have you ever looked at, excuse me,
No, go ahead.
all right. Northampton Street, as everyone knows, is now turning to be almost well, some people say it's just too fast. It's getting to be a superhighway. Have you considered, 45-mile-an-hour traffic for your business may not hurt your business too much, but when you get that much traffic in the 3, 4, 5 o'clock area, Northampton Street is a buzz bomb and everybody knows it. And 45 now turns down, but did you ever consider asking that, will that ever lower the speed limit from 45 to say 35?
Right,
I would like to see it lower
yeah, it's beyond
myself,
the purview of a project like this, and also that speed limit is typically set based on the speeds of the roadway. You can't set a speed limit to then lower the speed. So it's something that the community could pursue. It's something that Mass DOT generally will review, as they're undergoing, as was mentioned with the River Valley project. They're looking at changes to this roadway, so it's an opportunity to look at that. But a single project such as this isn't really going to get into changing the speed limit of the roadway.
We're getting late. I'm going to ask a question or two, see if the board has any other questions on this, and then let the public speak. And then I think we'll probably have to push off to the next time we're going to meet and talk about that a little. I just had one little wrench, though. We have this new little parking area going through, and it looks like you put a gravel roadway going to it. Does it have its own egress as well? And I know that it's mostly employees who intend to go there, but that's a third entry exit coming in and out. Was that ever in any of your calculations?
So our study, when we completed it, didn't have that specifically, but we have since looked at the additional parking areas, both to make sure that there's enough parking. I mean, that's important to us from a traffic and safety perspective, but also obviously they want to be able to park everybody that wants to come to the site. Looking at the driveway that's on Northampton Street, it's a very similar story to what we have here. So while we didn't specifically analyze it, the numbers of vehicles going into that site existing, plus the employee parking that's going to take place typically outside of those peak periods, we wouldn't expect any issues. That site also has a driveway out onto Highland Avenue. It's a pretty low volume roadway there, and so any vehicles that might travel to that part of the roadway network also wouldn't be expected to have an impact.
So low impact is what you're saying?
Low impact, yes.
Any other questions from the board?
Yeah, that's reasonable.
Jeff, are there any hot issues you want me to tackle before we open it to the public?
No, I have a question about deferred after the public comments. It's about signage for this adjacent lot and how do you plan to, so if you Google, your location's gonna come up 155, so just talking about how, if you are full in your parking lot, how are you gonna let people know that this parking is adjacent to it, hopefully before they pull in and pull out and then to cross over, all that stuff. So.
Questions out there? I may as well answer it now.
Okay.
What do you guys think?
Sure. So I always anticipated like a base traffic sign, a sandwich board sign, just saying, on busy days, overflow parking, and clearly delineated. I don't know if you guys have.
Plus, our website will also say there's overflow parking, right?
And to that point again, the majority of that overflow was for employees.
I'll go through a quick list out at the end, but I think, including that in the opening day document, I think they'll ask for that in a couple other minutes once we hear from the public, so.
Sounds good. All right, who wants to talk about this project? I think I saw your hand first, so go ahead.
Yeah, I have a few questions and then maybe a statement. Would it be possible, Sam Nelson, 25 Highland, my property actually directly abuts theirs behind them. I am kind of opposed to the project. It's there. I'm not asking the board to consider stopping the project. But what I am asking for is, I am directly opposed to the additional parking in the Easthampton Tire parking lot. That is a bus stop for my children and for several other children on the street that walk up and down the street. I can't in good conscience allow my kids to continue to go to the bus stop there if there's going to be additional parking and people exiting onto Highland Ave, which I don't technically think that cannabis industry shop can have exiting onto a residential street. I don't think that
I know of no regulation like that.
Okay, well, I don't understand how the town would allow that. It's, first of all, it's a densely populated, dead-end residential street with lots of kids. And if anyone thinks that someone's not gonna make a wrong left turn
I
on that
apologize,
street.
I want to interrupt, I just want to make sure I'm understanding, because it's critical that I understand.
Okay.
The overflow parking, my understanding is the entrance and exit is on Northampton Street. Is that what we're talking about? And you're saying?
The card that I got into the mail, in the mail, said that the exit was going to be on Highland Ave.
Can we confirm? Do you have an entrance or
We
exit?
have accessibility to Highland Ave if people want to utilize it to exit, but if they want to get onto Northampton Street, it is an option.
Can you show me on the other map where that is? I apologize, I will continue back into public speak in just a moment. I just want to make sure that I get clarification of your statement, sir.
Yeah, I mean, and I think I will say it's in the opening day plan, the customers utilizing these spaces will have the option to use Highland Ave as a egress point direct from the.
All right, let's all just keep it together for a moment. I just want to make sure I put lock eyes on this so I have comprehension.
There it is. Take a look at this.
That's it.
Thank you.
These are the ones that are see on here.
I'm sorry about that.
Property comes around, this inspection station or whatever is there, you come out this way and go on to Highland.
Okay.
Right.
All right, thank you. I saw it. If anyone else has any questions to see it, they can show it. I'm going to let you please continue. We're going to want to talk about that.
Because my note, it says right here that it says with site development plans with the exception.
It's all listed,
secondary
please.
parking
Everyone,
area,
please.
Exit onto Highland Avenue. That, like I said, my children get dropped off from the bus at between 2:05 and 3:05 every day. And when they're walking, we're talking about two girls here, 11 and 12 years old, who are going to be walking down the street with another 11-year-old boy. Somebody comes whipping through, because the inspection building is directly behind Easthampton Tire. It's a very narrow passageway between the two. That doesn't obviously fit a car. You and I know if somebody's in a hurry, they're going to come flying through there, and that's just high risk for our children on the street. Right? And someone will make a wrong left turn and end up going down the street. There's no sidewalks at all. And with the gentleman's comment that it's a low traffic street, I can tell you that's not true. There's actually quite a bit of houses on that street with quite a bit of visitors. We've been having problems with the speed on the street for a couple of years now, and there have been numerous complaints made to the city with nothing done about it. This is just going to add to the problem. And getting out of the street at any time of day, that light, if you hit that light wrong, you're sitting there for 3 to 4 minutes before the light changes back.
You're talking the O'Neill intersection?
Highland Ave.
Oh, Highland Ave.
The light only stays green for Highland Ave for maybe 15 seconds. That's it. You can't make it from her house or my house
Except for 20.
to the light with being green and make the light. You can't do it. Few other questions that I had. With in regards to people waiting in the parking lot if there's overflow, is it possible to get a fence put up behind the building, behind the parking lot, on the tree line, so that maybe people don't wander? Maybe it would reduce some of the noise implications from the patrons to the residents on Highland Ave, especially the first 4 houses, because we would be the ones directly affected. What day of the week was the traffic study done on? Does anybody know?
Yeah, we counted on a Thursday and on a Saturday.
At what time of day?
We counted Thursday from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. and Saturday from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m.
Okay.
This data is all available too as
Correct.
part of the
Yes,
packet,
all
so
part
you'll
of
be able
the-
to get all that data.
Okay.
as well.
Also, the increase in traffic flow from the previous business. How large an increase did you say it was?
So in the weekday afternoon, it's an additional 10 vehicles entering and 10 vehicles
From the
exiting.
previous business?
From the previous business. So a total of, the site is projected to generate 27 entering and 27 exiting during.
I can't take that as gospel because the previous business was a pet groomer and there was almost no customer base there. I mean, I live right there, so I see it all the time. There was almost always never anybody there. So the increase is going to be dramatically more than what the study is showing. I mean, if anybody goes by INSA, which, I mean, every now and then I work part-time for the building owner, where at 122 and 142. So I see the traffic flow in and out of there. It's a very large increase in traffic flow. That's all I have. And I'm adamantly opposed to the exit onto Highland Ave and the additional parking at Easthampton Tire. It's a safety issue for the neighborhood.
And you requested a fence.
And I am requesting a fence directly behind the parking lot on the tree line.
Okay.
Business.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Oh, rather than directly responding to these, just keep a note of what's been asked. We'll bring them up again to talk about them. But I want to see if anyone else has anything to add to the list before you try to tackle it. Is there anyone else that wants to talk? Hey.
James J.P. Kwasinski. I was wondering if you could demonstrate where the traffic will flow on a plan.
The vehicular traffic.
Vehicular traffic that would be coming from the site of business, your business, through the Dion business and onto Highland Avenue. I believe you're crossing over a neighbor's land and not utilizing your own land. Is that?
No, the site itself, our site, people coming to our site would be contained on our site. The additional parking that would happen at Dion's site is separate. So
is separate.
So people couldn't go from our site to Dion's.
There's only a walking path from Dion to...
So you'd enter through Highland Avenue, go on to Dion's.
I thought you said you were putting a gravel road.
Gravel walkway. Walkway, just a walkway. There's no road going between the two properties, it's a gravel walkway. And so there's an entrance to Dion off of Route 10, and there's an entrance to Dion off of Highland Avenue.
Right.
And so both of them would be available to enter Dion and to exit Dion.
So available through Highland and through Northampton Street, and then be able to walk from Dion's property
to
the site. That isn't what it appeared from the card you received. What was happening? Okay, so that clarifies something.
And the parking is adjacent directly to our property, as opposed to like on a far side of Mr. Dion's
I know
property.
what you're talking about. You did right there along Northampton Street where there's that kind of rain pit where
the L, there's like an L there.
The cattails are. Correct. That.
Yes.
I'm interested if the gravel walkway was presented to the planning board before it was done, because that's a direct drainage into the wetland behind that.
That gravel walkway is new to us. We're going to definitely be talking about that more throughout this process. Is there anyone else that wants to speak? I'm sorry, JP, were you done?
I think that clarified the trip. The fence idea I am supportive of, as in general being a separation between an increased use of the commercial area and the residential site. If it had been pre-existing, not to have a fence, I think now it makes sense to add the fence as a condition.
And I just want to, again, make sure I'm understanding. You're talking about between the overflow site and
the residential neighborhood, because as I understand it, the overflow site, the parking site.
That's not their property though, right?
It's not your property.
I'm not requesting a fence on the overflow site. I'm requesting a fence on their site.
Can we mark it up right now where we're thinking? Because I need clarification exactly where this fence is
So there's a fence extending along.
I actually have a...
behind
all right, hold on just one moment, please. Hold on. Follow along. Chris is raising a great point. I'm having trouble following.
Yeah,
so here's my request. We're going to have to meet again, and I think we're just about to talk about some items that Jeff has and when we're going to meet again. I would love it, as we always do, if you try to have a conversation with your neighbors, take some phone numbers. Of course. I'd love it if you all came to this meeting unified next time and having discussed these things together and present to us the best plan to move forward.
Absolutely.
Okay?
I also would like to see a plan very similar to this plan that we have shown right here, with the proposed parking on the adjacent land, with the access walkway between the two, with any fence. Well, we have a separate plan, a separate 11 by 17, which is challenging for me to, I think, pick people to understand where this parking is located. Where I think it's important to also discuss
Yeah, David, it's not in that set.
That's not in
It's
that
a full-size set, but we submitted a full-size copy.
Just quick on, I think that the plan is slightly inadequate because it doesn't actually show Highland Ave. So I think
No,
that's
that's-
what,
Right.
That's
what you're
problematic.
missing
It's too
in terms
close.
of orientation.
Yeah, it's too close to see the whole concept, the whole plan as a
It would have to
unified
draw it
concept.
in, Chris, to see it all.
Yeah, and then the proposed flow within the adjacent property about how the traffic flow is expected, if it's coming onto Highland, if it's coming onto Northampton, how that traffic is happening, so that we can have a full comprehensive discussion about how those two properties interact.
Yeah, you're right.
If there is a proposed fence, where is it gonna go? You know, that kind of thing.
I had one other question, I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt. The three concrete pads behind Holistic Industry that are gonna be put in, one's already existing, there's 2 more being put in. What was being put on those again? Was there an emergency generator?
Emergency generator and propane tanks.
Propane tanks.
No, one
Will those
propane
be-
tank, or
Yeah,
they
it was just one
tanks?
propane tank, wasn't it?
It was tank, I thought.
Tanks, I believe there's 3.
There's 3 tanks?
3, yeah, 3 small propane tanks.
Will there be anything done to, now is this generator gonna be used all the time, or is it just an emergency backup?
Emergency.
Okay.
Emergency.
Same thing with the propane required by the
Okay, it's getting late.
My backyard.
Yeah, I get it. Understand.
I'd like to, Jeff,
It's been a lot of time out there.
Yeah.
if you have a list to get through, I just want to add this one thing. I always recommend communicating with the neighbors. It makes everyone's life better, not just for the purpose of this meeting, but living forward and working together. And I ask the company to take the time to make that communication and do the best you can. And I ask the neighbors too that, you have to make allowances. Sometimes businesses move in that you don't like. They have the right to have a business there.
Absolutely.
So please work with them too.
Yeah,
like that.
if I may say, I mean, being a good steward of the community and a good neighbor is the most important thing to us. And we'll chat afterwards, but whatever we can do to
All right.
So I think this gravel path, you should just have an evaluation of if that gravel path will increase the stormwater runoff, will increase the challenge. The reason why the applicant or why the resident was bringing that up is because there is some drainage issues on Highland Ave, so they're very concerned about.
Right.
Absolutely.
Highland had always had.
Well, so we'll talk about that at the next meeting, when we talk about how you're gonna handle any sort of impacts to the stormwater as a result of this path, and any changes with this additional parking that might impact stormwater.
Anything else that you want to add to that, Jeff?
Makes no sense.
Just a couple of things. Just an observation that if there's a way to prevent the overflow parking from getting onto Highland Ave, I think that's important to consider preventing, because you have the other entrance on Northampton Street. I mean, just observing, I don't think, and then you need to explore this and confirm, but I don't think people trying to get to the site are generally going to try to go down Highland to get in, but the exiting. So it is something that seems relatively excluded from your traffic study, which is any of those additional vehicles stacking at the light on Highland and whether that changes the level of service. I think either eliminate it or address it through the traffic study, that it won't have a change in the level of service. I feel like there's not a totally clear direction here, so I think the board would have one more meeting to clarify any of the responses before really, getting a decision drafted and things like that and conditions. But in that line of thinking, the opening plan, I think it would be good to include reference to coordination with the police department on details. So we didn't really get into it very deeply, but the planning board has, some jurisdiction over the security plan and the proposal, but the chief of police will get whatever they need to be prepared for the opening. And so some nod to agreeing to police details would be good in the plan, but then the chief of police will work with you out closer to opening.
They've been in communication.
So just showing the willingness to work with chief of police on details, I think will be important.
Sure.
Addressing how you would direct people to the extra lot through the signs.
And if you decide that you maybe don't want to use Highland Ave, how are you going to direct them to not leave Highland Ave as they exit?
Right, I think that's going to be key. And then the last thing, just about, so the additional parking generated new questions that we didn't cover when we were talking about this for medical use. The lease agreement seems to suggest you have the lease for 3 months plus 3 1-month extensions. So when we get there, the conditions that the board has discussed is building in some kind of review period of that. And if you are at a high demand, we have to have a discussion about the ability to extend that further. But we could build a system where you'd have to come to the planning board at 3 months in, and if the demand is still high, then the condition will have to be that you have to go and renegotiate that with evidence coming back that you could still extend that if needed. That was the short list. The timing of our next meeting, I think, is important to consider.
Well, I mean, you need time. I think you said December is when you're looking at for the CCC meeting. It sounds to me like what you just said is that we're going to need a meeting again and then come up with that meeting with our conditions and things that we want to put forward to go into a third. Is that what you're suggesting? I mean, we might be able to bang it up the next one and do it on the fly, but it's always best if we have time where our city planner can predispose the documentation. It makes it easier for us to move through.
Yeah.
So it's really a question of if it's going to be 2 or 3. How does that fit in with your timing?
I mean, 2 would be preferred, and we'll, we have a whole team that will address all the issues.
To make that happen, pushing it out longer and feeding him information in advance is best.
Sure.
But there were a lot of questions that came from this meeting, so he can't really assume a lot early. It makes it harder. We have some decisions to make there right now.
I mean, one scenario, so the board's schedule is December 3rd, so I don't think it's appropriate that that's the target, but the next meeting would be December 17th. It's a day before, if you were lucky to get your provisional issued on the 18th, it's a day before that, but it could be the opportunity to address the issues and questions that you heard tonight, and then if you are looking like you're getting a provisional from the Cannabis Control Commission, then unfortunately the week of the 23rd and the week of the 30th are
We're just not celebrating holidays this year. That's it.
So I think you'd be looking at a best case scenario of coming back to the board for the potentially a third time on January 7th. If everything moves
So the
forward
17th
quickly.
then will be our continuation, and there's a, I won't say strong, but a possibility that we would go to a meeting beyond that.
7th, yeah.
Would that fit?
Sure.
And do we have anything else on the 17th?
What, when you say 17th, what do you...
Did I pick the wrong?
December 17th.
December 17th, sorry.
Yeah.
That would be a 6 p.m. meeting?
Yes.
Yes.
Yep. But no, my recommendation would be...
Wait, I'm sorry, he said would it be 6 p.m. and I said yes instinctively. Well, I don't know if there's anything else on the agenda already.
It's too early to tell whether we would get a new application for that evening.
So this could be the first
Are we
time.
meeting on the 3rd?
We are...
Okay, we're
potentially
saying
meeting on the
you
3rd.
prefer maybe the 17th because you won't... the 18th is the next.
I think I would feel comfortable coming back on the 3rd. If we could get all the issues together within the next couple of days, I think we could address them very quickly.
Yeah, because it's only, what is it, the 11th?
I mean, then we'd essentially be assured then that there'd be a third meeting because you still need the provisional license, but it would get it done earlier. I have no problem with that. What's on the agenda?
It's 3 weeks away, so it's...
I mean, it's up to them if there's enough time. They'll know if they're ready or not.
December 3rd, that's what, 3 weeks?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's 3 weeks away.
Can you do 3 weeks?
To answer the questions and talk to the landowners and butters and...
Yeah, absolutely.
You sure?
What's on the agenda on the 3rd?
I'm putting a dot right
We better be sure.
The only thing for
All right, keep it together
the
now.
only thing for the board members to understand is that the board does have business to conduct on the 26th of November, so you would have a meeting on the 26th, and then a meeting in the next week. Yeah.
Oh, that's 2 weeks from now, and
2
you
weeks.
have a 3rd.
But
That's not a problem for me.
Okay.
The only reason I would suggest coming back the 3rd is that, we'd love to in 3 weeks we can address these concerns and put a lot of manpower behind it, and then, that way at least we'll know on the 17th.
Okay. I'm looking for a motion to continue. What's that? Yeah. To continue the Holistic Industries Inc. Special permit for a adult use until December 3rd. You want to
I would say go ahead with that.
I moved to, yeah.
Okay,
Is that good enough for a motion, or?
Is that
Did you catch that?
I got that.
All
All right, I'll second it.
All right.
Okay, thank you,
You said
Chris.
6 p.m.
6 p.m. It's 6 p.m.
December
on the 3rd. Any
So-
further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any against or abstentions? It's approved.
And just for people who don't attend meetings only, that is the notice, so there is not another mailing. So that's the date that was set, December 3rd at 6.
It'll be the first thing on the agenda, so we'll be here at 6.
I've got some signed documents from you. We're all set. Oh, we're not all set. We need to adjourn our meeting. Do we have any other business or announcements? I'm looking for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Any against or abstentions? And we are done. Your signed documents are here. Jeff, when is the next meeting? The 26th?
2 weeks from today.
Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you. Pleasure. I hope they're going to bring you out for all of our meetings.
Plugs right in from London every time.
Now I'm gonna go to sleep. Now I'm going to sleep.
They go with Ryan.
I recommend Cocoa. Cocoa is an incredible restaurant. It's world-renowned.
Me too. You got a little bit of indication too. If you came in without any extra parking, you could probably get some
If Coco's closed, the reservation underneath it is the bar that has the same menu.
Oh, yeah, the cellar bar, it's awesome.
Oh, yeah.
Take care, guys. Thank you. No one goes out to eat in Northampton anymore.
You don't have to. We have got such great places.
I know you do.
Alan, so I think that you should get.
Same button to shut it?
Yeah, so Vince